phone. It broke. Oh my god. There's nobody online. What's going on?
Kirsty went and had fixes for me the other day.
For all the wooders trying to like.
That's Miranda? Nope. Okay, not yet.
Nate's one minute away. Yeah.
I still have like 50.
There he is. No.
Nope.
That's
Hold
Mary.
on.
Very.
How are you?
They thought it was Nate.
Oh, sure. Welcome.
Welcome.
Ding ding. Alright,
It's that time.
let's do it.
Okay.
Wait, we haven't started
Recording in
the.
progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call the December 16th Town Board Meeting to order. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everyone could please stay standing, I'd like to have a moment of silence for the terror victims in Australia. Thank you. All right. So I'll start off with the supervisor's report. Good evening and happy holidays to my fellow Fallsburg residents. As this is our final town board meeting of the year, it is also my last supervisor's report to you all. I would like to take a few moments to reflect on the past 2 years and share where I believe we have made meaningful progress as a town. Serving as town supervisor has been a tremendous learning experience. Coming into this role as a trained city manager and an experienced governmental auditor and fraud examiner, I was eager to review our financial practices and identify opportunities to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our local government. In my professional background, issues related to fraud, waste, or abuse are expected to be addressed promptly and thoughtfully through corrective action plans. At the same time, I have come to better appreciate that meaningful change in government, particularly in communities where long-standing practices have been in place for decades, does not happen overnight. Recognizing that I am one voice among many decision makers, I have made it a priority to ensure transparency and independence by relying on appropriate state agencies to conduct audits when necessary. This approach helps remove politics or personalities from the process and ensures that the public can have confidence in the results. Despite these challenges, I firmly believe we have made sound and responsible decisions that protect the long-term future of Fallsburg. Over the past 2 years, I have consistently opposed individual requests for zoning changes that would benefit a single landowner without considering the broader impact on our community. I strongly believe zoning decisions should be made through a comprehensive planning process guided by a comprehensive plan developed by a planning committee, rather than through piecemeal amendments. Similarly, during this time, we have declined nearly all requests from developers to extend water and sewer districts, except where prior boards have made commitments that legally bind us today. We know that our current water and sewer systems do not have sufficient capacity to serve every parcel already within the districts. Expanding them without first addressing capacity would be irresponsible. This represents a significant shift from past practices, but one that is necessary to protect taxpayers and infrastructure alike. With respect to our aging water and sewer infrastructure, I have consistently advocated for a proactive, preventative maintenance approach, particularly the replacement of water mains before they reach the end of their useful life and fail unexpectedly. On the sewer side, I am pleased to report that we have secured funding and have officially broken ground on the long-awaited upgrades to the sewer plants. I'd also like to highlight progress within our highway department. Prior to taking office, a colleague of mine at the county, Rosanna Dolgas, had described terrible working conditions that her husband endures at the town highway barn. Just days after taking office, I toured the highway barn in Woodburn and was deeply concerned by the condition of the facility and the work environment of our employees. Working closely with our highway superintendent, we began advocating for a new highway barn. With the support of key stakeholders, we now have plans in place and a site selected, and we are finally seeing tangible progress towards making this long overdue project a reality. Finally, and most importantly, I am proud of the work we have done to support our dedicated police officers and civil servants. Advocating for family health insurance benefits into retirement is about more than benefits. It is about respect, retention, and stability. By taking care of those who serve our community, we strengthen employee loyalty and ensure that Fallsburg remains a place where talented public servants choose to build long-term careers. It sends a clear message. If you dedicate your career to serving this town will stand by you and your family. I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to serve as your town supervisor over the last 2 years. It has been an honor, and I look forward to continuing to contribute to this board and this community in the years ahead. Thank you for your trust and support. I wish you and your families a happy, healthy, and blessed holiday season. I would also like to acknowledge Councilwoman Behan. The Benjamin Kozer Elementary School, the students there had a holiday concert that was planned at the government center, but because they had over 60 students, they couldn't reasonably fit in the government center. So instead, they managed to take all of them into the ARC and perform for the residents of ARC, which was a tremendous benefit to them.
Wonderful, Miranda.
They were fantastic.
And,
You are amazing.
and Councilwoman Behan was kind enough to present all of the students with a little gift package.
And there was supposed to be 70, but 65 showed up today. And it was my pleasure to take care of the kids.
Yeah, so good for them, and and it's tremendous benefit to the ARC residents.
Yes.
I know they enjoyed it deeply. Do we have any correspondence tonight? Hello?
No.
No correspondence? So then I'd like to open up to public comments. Anyone like to speak?
James Liguri.
Thank you, Mike, for your speech and what you have done in the last 2 years. It's been a pleasure knowing you and working with you. Tonight, though, I would like to say thank you to you guys for getting the department that you just spoke of, the new trucks that you got, because your guys sure put them to good use this year with the first the first snowfalls that we had. So if you can pass that on to that department, I would really appreciate it. I was out on another errand, and I got to watch 3 or 4 of them in action. They're very alert, very watching, particularly at the intersections, so I just wanted to say thank you to that. The other thing, I want to thank you guys for putting the right to farm back on tonight's agenda. After listening to Amy give you guys her version of why we should have that as part of our town, I think it goes without saying that I really hope that you all put that into effect. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else?
I don't have anybody else.
Would anyone from the public like to speak?
I would like to say something to Nathan.
We'll address the board, and
Okay.
Nathan will listen.
Oh, okay. I wanted to say to Nathan and to the board, the Blue Fox Motel for Thanksgiving had an incredible dinner. I wanted to say thank you to Nathan for inviting me to there. I had the pleasure to meet your wife's best friend, Greta. It was really incredible, and the food was phenomenal.
Okay, glad you enjoyed it.
Yes,
Thank you, Ocean.
yes.
Would anyone else like to say a word tonight? All right, anyone online like to speak?
Nope.
No? All right, going once, going twice, and public portion is closed. All right, so now we can move on to our agenda items. Number 1, motion to approve town board minutes dated 11/25/25.
Motion.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 2, motion to approve warrant number 1225 dated 12/4/25 in the amount of $1,083,197.49.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 3, this is the town board meeting schedule. The only significant change is that for 2026, we will be moving our meetings to Wednesday nights. Three nights a month. So it's gonna be the first Wednesday, the third Wednesday, and the fourth Wednesday.
So, that would be January,
January 7th, the first.
January
meeting.
7th is the
I
I
first.
have a few
Is the next
copies that I can give you. once
Okay,
they pass
wonderful,
it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so number 3, motion to approve the 2026 town board meeting schedule.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 4, motion to approve employment of Chris Lee as a MEO Class A in the Highway Department with an hourly pay of $25.09 per hour, effective 12/9/25.
Motion.
Second. Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye, motion passes. Number 5, motion to accept the resignation from Chris Lee in the Highway Department, effective 12/10/25.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. That was quick. Number 6, motion to accept the resignation of Michael Pellot from the Highway Department, effective 12/19/25.
Motion.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Chastity.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye, motion passes. Number 7, so this has to do with a sewer district extension for Luxor Junior. Part of the process requires a public hearing. This is one of those situations where, I think it was in the later part of 2023, the board had, basically made some, I guess, promises that they would extend, and now the developer's coming and holding us to that. So in a sense, we already made the commitment, they've already spent money, so it's one of those situations where we've already paid the primrose path to approval, and we're not in a position to deny it now. So the first step in that process is to set a public hearing. So number 7, motion to set date and time for Luxor Junior Water and Sewer Extension Public Hearing for 1/21/2026 at 6 p.m.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Motion passes. The next one, I believe we're fixing a previous resolution, right, Richard?
It just had a title that got carried over from Santa.
Right, so it's
So
really
just to clean
a,
up, just to change the name.
it's a name change. All right, so resolution number 107 of 2025, correction to resolution 97 of 2025, granting of easement to New York State Electric and Gas Corporation, NYSEG, regarding the Neversink Crossing project.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, resolution passes. Number 9, resolution 108 of 2025, authorizing execution of contract with Axon Enterprise Incorporated for body-worn camera program.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, resolution passes. All right, so that's it for our agenda items tonight. We do have one discussion item tonight, and that is the consideration of the adoption of the right to farm declaration. So, I believe Cornell Cooperative reached out to me a while ago about adopting a right to farm law that basically mirrors Bethel's right to farm law. But the question that's always asked is, what is a right to farm? Do we not have a right to farm currently? Are you not allowed to farm in an ag district? There is a right to farm. So going over the Bethel law, essentially, and I may be reading this wrong, but essentially it talks about how we cannot, deter or somehow inhibit farming operations at all. And essentially, and then the other piece is that Bethel requires a disclosure that anybody that buys property in the ag district receive a disclosure as part of the sale that they are moving into a right to farm, an agricultural district that, that functions like farms normally functions. It's gonna have noise, it's gonna have, smell of manure, this is normal for farms, and that they are duly warned that, this will happen. So it becomes a requirement. So there's a number of disclosures when you buy a house that that you're required to give, and that's one of the disclosures that you're required to give in Bethel. The other part is that if there's any dispute over zoning, like noise or smells or anything like that, that there'd be a separate, I guess, board made up of folks that are regular residents, that are also farmers, you know, to help mediate any disputes from neighbors that may have an issue with the farming operations happening nearby. But the thing that I got, I guess the takeaway that I got the most from this right to farm law is that the only thing it really grants you is some sort of exemption from local zoning or zoning ordinances, specifically like noise. You know, it allows a farming operation to operate 24 hours a day, and that means if neighbors complain about noise or smells, particularly noise, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, they would have to go to this board to determine if the noise is outside the normal scope of a normal farming operation. I mean, I don't know, is there more to that?
I was always, I know with one issue particularly, I was talking to a neighbor in the ag zone, a farmer, that they would burn during burn bans. And the farmer, I wasn't complaining, I was just asking, he said they don't follow in general the same restrictions because of the farm already. This was in the town also. So I'm not sure, we should look into it, but I think they already have a lot of.
The right to farm law, the concept is to allow farming using traditional farming practices, which aren't necessarily neighbor-friendly. The disclosures are designed to prevent nuisance lawsuits, and the concept is if you're following farming practices, and they're correct in traditional farming practices, that someone can't come to the nuisance, and then complain about it. Unfortunately, nuisance law has changed over the years, and in my career, I've seen it more from, if there's a nuisance, let's say a landfill.
Right.
You know, it used to be you couldn't go next to the landfill, buy a lot, say, I have a house here now, it smells, take your landfill down. But that's the kind of thing that has happened with some of this litigation. And it can be a prohibition on farming. The other aspect is most people don't even know that farming, once it is a farm, pretty much all building permits are voluntary. As long as you don't build within 10 feet of the property line, you're allowed to build whatever you want. You're allowed to build housing for farming housing. You're allowed to build pretty much anything. It's the wild, it's to preserve the sort of old free ways of farming. They are trying to encourage, you know, best practices for farming, but you still, spreading manure is a traditional way of dealing with it. And you may be surprised, but some people object to that. You know, for example, if the farm that we're in litigation with now that had insufficient acres in an agricultural zone, if that had enough acreage, all those complaints, as long as they're following best practices for raising marijuana, you would not be allowed to regulate those. You know, so that's that aspect. So there is a potential impact on the regulation by the town, legitimate regulation of zoning and building. In addition, there have been environmental concerns raised under various state and federal laws where certain farming practices, you know, can create wetlands that are now immediately regulated. You know, so there would be exemption and issues there. And you always have the question of old versus new. You have an existing farm, you have new people coming in. So it is something that you have to analyze to see if it's an appropriate thing that you want to adopt. You know, and it does give an enhancement where someone can't come to it and say, I don't like the smell of chickens. So that's really what you have, and it can preempt you know, zoning laws. I know that years ago I was involved in an application for experimental organic hemp, and it was part of a pilot project through the state of New York, and they were trying to see if it was usable for bandages for military, and it was a veteran-owned company that was in a pilot project, and it was in a town, I won't mention where, but it was in a town where every single farm was a special use permit, all of them. So we had to go in with a special use permit, and I was getting such gem questions like, well, what does a tractor look like? How big is a tractor? How loud is a tractor? How big is the box truck that's gonna come in and take the product out? how many times is the box truck gonna come? You know, and the neighbor said, you know, people are gonna wanna buy drugs from me. I can't have that poison in my drainage, I'm gonna fill in the town's drainage ditch. So, you know, after that particular area was moved into the district, all of that went away, and the farmer was left alone. But again, you have to analyze it and see how it is. There, it was something that was very beneficial to the client. The client was using best practices, and the planning board was torturing them. They had a beautiful spread. They were trying to repopulate the American chestnut. They said, you need to screen it. So what are you gonna do to screen it? We'll plant 300 forsythia bushes. That was on the plan. And then they said, well, what if one dies? We're planting 50 extra in the back. But this was the kind of client that was like no holds barred. And yet, the public, the board were after them, even though it was best practices and they were following code. They even were criticized, they had high-tech membrane irrigation. And that makes sure that the irrigation goes to the plants and doesn't have a lot of runoff. There were neighbors complaining that that's gonna put poison in their well. So, you know, these are the things, it makes it impossible to start the farm if you have to cater to those kind of conditions.
But that was a special use permit, right? We don't
Yes, but
require a special use permit.
no, we don't. But that was just to show you why a right to farm law might be necessary for a farmer to start a new farm. There, it was something, we want to start new farms, and it was very, very difficult. The planning board was brutal, but eventually that particular area went into the farming district, and the next round, they were growing hemp then, they're now growing outdoor marijuana now. And the right to farm helped them out to get the operation going. So that's the push and pull of it. So it certainly can be examined.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at, because, I mean, we don't have to copy another town's law. We can make it specific to our needs, to what, you know, we feel works for us. You know, you mentioned like Burnt Ridge Road, you know, that marijuana farm. So theoretically, if they bought the property behind them and now they have 10 acres, then neighbors can no longer complain
With the
about
right
it.
to farm law, a lot of those complaints would not, as long as they were proper practices, whatever, you know, because there were certain things we were complaining about. Complained about the way they did irrigation, they complained
lights.
about the lights, there were complaints. So those complaints, which was, this was a very passionate public hearing where what they were doing was horrible. On an insufficient amount of acreage, you could stop it. But if they had the right amount of acreage, the right to farm law would come in and say, look, you may not like the look of our tanks, but these are proper tanks. The chemicals that we use are approved and appropriate. It's an appropriate farming method, and if it's an appropriate farming method, unless they're doing something that's way out of line, you're gonna end up eliminating your ability to regulate that. So that is the trade-off.
Yeah, I'm always skeptical when a law is named something specific, like right to farm. It kind of reminds me of like the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really nothing about reducing inflation. So you gotta look at the meat, you gotta look at the details. So I'd be very curious to find out, you know, from our farmers, you know, what aspects of this law is most important to them that maybe we can consider and, you know, implement if it, you know, if there is a need, if there's a deficiency in our local zoning that somehow inhibits our farmers. James, did you want to ask something or?
Yeah, but just, you said that you looked at the town of Bethel's law. It's my understanding that there are several towns in our county that have right to farming laws. And it would seem to me you might want to look at all of the other laws that are in place and compare those and find one that most fits our little community here in South Fallsburg.
Right, I mean, I don't know if I guess Cornell Cooperative gave us Bethel's as their model, but obviously, you know, we have 15 towns and there's only a handful that haven't passed it, so, you know, it might be worthwhile to see what other towns have passed, what works for them. Maybe we could pass something that works for us. Amy, do you want to help us?
Sure. I would like to actually suggest maybe looking at liberties. So, liberty, we don't have any production agriculture anymore. Town of Bethel has dairy farms, they have beef farms, they've got a wide variety of livestock. In town of Fallsburg, we don't have that. Sullivan County actually used to be #1 for poultry production in the state. That was decades ago, and town of Fallsburg contributed vastly to that. Those days are gone. There's not really those numbers of chickens. Do people still spread manure? They sure do. And they're gonna do it whether or not you guys pass this or not, because they already are. And most of that manure is duck and chicken manure being trucked in from town of Bethel to spread on hayfields. So yeah, it smells like eggshells for a little while and then it goes away. So it's really not that bad, and they're certainly nowhere near our town areas. Our town, or our farm, what we have is production, but it's more hay. We have quite a few equines now. Our neighbor does not complain about the smell or the noise at all. We do have a couple beef cows that we will look to expand. They're so cute, you should come cuddle. And we do have a very small handful of chickens, only 9. He didn't even know that they were there.
So Amy, is the idea of a right to farm law to try to encourage more production farms? Is that the
It's
goal?
actually just kind of to preserve what we have now. Again, the town of Fallsburg taxes are so high,
Yeah.
they really are.
Highest.
We're not going to have dairy move in here. It's not gonna happen. We're not gonna have big beef operations or big chicken operations anymore. A, it costs so much to start up. B, a lot of the land is just being taken. This is a good way to help hold on to that land a little bit longer. But yeah, C, operating cost is just not there, and there's just no room for those big operations. So the western side of the county has most of the big production farms, and there's none left. I think maybe there's 7 dairy farms in Sullivan County. 7. That's it. We both worked for Extension back in our young children days. I was a 4-H educator, and he was actually the agriculture educator. So he knows a lot about that. But the numbers of production agriculture in this county are plummeting. Even just across New York State, I mean, we're talking in the hundreds of farms going out of business every year in New York State, and it's sad. Just driving, we go to Cobleskill frequently for family and horse shows, and passing the amount of dairy farms that are closed, that were open when I was in college, and they no longer exist, is very sad. We'd like to just hold on to what we have as long as we can in this town, and that's why I'm bringing this forward. And also, I'm super jealous that all of the other towns, I drive past Foxcroft and head up to the Neversink Reservoir, and there is a beautiful green and white sign, "Welcome to Neversink, a right to farm town." And I'm literally a quarter mile up the road, and I have 0 protections against our neighbors who drive right onto our properties when we are haying. God forbid I burn hay, which I do have a right to do, and it does replenish, it kills bad seeds and thistles and whatnot. I always call the control center. I'm married to the fire chief. I'm quite smart about what I'm doing. And yes, agriculture absolutely has the right to burn during the burn ban, but we don't, because of who we are and because of what we do in the community with the fire department. We lead best practices and by example, and we don't burn during the burn ban. But when my hayfields get thunderstormed on, it's ruined. There's no point in me putting more time and diesel fuel into mulch hay that nobody's gonna buy. So I'm gonna burn that. And then I have everybody and their fathers calling police. I had Stephen Vogler called me and, yeah, we're just burning. He knew it, the control center. But I have people just drive right on across my hay that is growing up to say, your field's on fire. I know, I'm literally standing right here. Here's my big white truck right here. Here's rates. I'm right here. I just want to have the right to do what I do to keep the hay growing, to feed all my animals. And we really want to grow this agritourism thing. And that, I think, is kind of the only way that Fallsburg is going to continue standing in agriculture is providing agritourism. So we've started a farm stand. We welcome all of you to come on over. Please visit us on Divine Corners Road. Steve's been there. Mr. McGarry's been there. It's been very nice. But we want to put in a corn maze. We want to put beef cows over there, miniature Herefords. They're so freaking cute. We were at the Woodburn trunk or treat. Kids loved it. They were sticking their hands and they're rubbing these cows. They're so wonderful. We want to raise Thanksgiving turkeys. We want to do these kind of things. And we want to open our land up to the public so they can come and enjoy and just be part of agriculture. And hopefully we'll hold on to that, you know, long past we're dead. We don't want it to get developed, so we need help. We need some protections.
Okay, so with regard to the welcome to Fallsburg, a right to farm town, I think whatever we pass, we can put up signs like that, you know.
Yes.
So looking at specifics to help protect, you know, so we're talking about protections. I think the only protection you point out would be like the burn ban, right? You know, cops coming and, you know, so.
Oh, I'm not worried about the officers, but yeah,
Right, but we
people,
can,
but
you
also
know.
like passing tractors. Tractors are New York State recognized vehicles. Actually, horses are as well. If you look in your DMV rule book, horses have the right of way, and that is an issue
Is that current?
yes.
Yes.
So
Oh,
a
yes.
right to farm law doesn't grant that power?
No, but it would bring more awareness, so to speak, to
Okay.
it. So, that kind of thing, I've been asking the town for decades for horse crossing signs. I'll never get them probably. But, yeah, we're run off the road, quite often, with our tractors or with the horses, and it's terrifying. So, just, you know, any kind of, something like that says, I have the right to drive my $60,000 tractor on the road. Keep your $40,000 minivan away from me, that's all.
All right, well, okay, I think we could maybe create an awareness campaign, because the law already exists, that right already exists. With regard to, you know, agritourism, I think that's already allowed in our zoning. You know, we just want to try to promote that more and you know, get the word out that that's something that we'd like to see. Now, with regard to, I think the other piece here that you mentioned that might be more impactful, probably the most impactful, has to do with our taxes. That makes it difficult for production farms to really operate. So would some sort of, you know, tax exemption for agricultural, would that be more
There
significant?
is, we do receive, and thank you for saying that it's not an exemption, it's a slight reduction.
Right.
And
It's
our
not a
taxes,
full-
but there are
It's not
certainly-
it's not 100% tax exempt property,
Oh, God.
it's just a slight reduction,
Yeah.
right? So, would more of that, or an additional, like, is that a big piece of what's, making it hard to be sustainable? Is it the taxes?
I mean, taxes are definitely part of it. I don't wanna turn this, personal, but I think unfortunately the location, Fallsburg has a stigma. Watch Sheldrake has a stigma, unfortunately, and we see this in the fire department, we see it with our pancake breakfasts, nobody comes. It's sad. Tri-Valley community doesn't like us because we're Fallsburg. Fallsburg doesn't like us because we're in the Tri-Valley community. We're the redheaded stepchild, and it kinda hurts. But it is what it is, so we just keep going. But I think, again, just having the signage, passing that right to farm law, you have, and I know the Rose Road situation, that's a completely different situation. There are other people who have moved in on Muthick Road. The horse farm on Muthick Road is trying very hard to have agritourism there, and they're newbies and they're learning. But this would help them tremendously, just to be more agricultural friendly, and you know, with your Never Sink the Railway and whatnot, just promote, this is another thing that Fallsburg can say, we're user friendly, we're tourist friendly, come check out our farms, come check out our rails to trails, those kind of things. But it also helps those of us who are still driving tractors down the roads and want to be able to work our land and keep trespassers off.
Steve, did you want to say?
Yeah, I like the idea with the farming, but I think you should ask the people that live in the town of Bethel near the duck farms, when it's 90 degrees. I was the postmaster in Conneaut Lake, and every time those honey dipper trucks pass by and drip, it smells worse than eggshells, I gotta tell you that.
But we don't have any production chicken farms.
I'm saying, but you might, and you might have a duck farm. I like the farming idea, I think it's great. But that aspect of it is horrific.
I mean, I love the right to farm signs, I love the tractor
too.
crossing,
Me
you know,
too.
and please give right of way. You know, the awareness and creating greater awareness and, you know, and creating a environment that's friendly to farming, I
And if
think
you
is
own
important.
it-
I'm
if-
trying to like get into the weeds of what specific
Got it,
things that we
yeah.
need to adopt that would actually be the most impactful. So obviously this is gonna be
Yeah.
one of many discussions and, you know, I will look at the Liberty Law. I wanna see how, you know, how we may be able to.
Right, because they have very little agricultural left in Liberty.
But are you saying
But
the
there's-
right to farm law
But
is
they have it,
robust?
but they have adopted it, so I'm wondering, and I don't know if it ebbs and flows between the different towns or not, but the western side of the county is going to have significantly more than us.
Yeah, well, sure, yeah, if you've been to Bethel and you see all those farms over
Right.
there, that's absolutely.
Right, even Neversink is very little, Coombs, they have two or 300 head of Black Angus, so that is a breeding, you know, and hay production farm, and Rick Coombs, he rents quite a bit of land in town of Fallsburg, to make hay, to harvest hay. So all down on the flats along the river and in Hasbrook, he's been doing there, quite a bit, and Pete would know a little bit more. But yeah, and Joe Crum has a couple Herefords and stuff in the backyard that you don't even know it's there, it's so quiet. And that's right in Neversink, right, literally next to the post office, on Main Street in Neversink, and nobody complains, that's in residential. And they're grandfathered in because it was all agriculture before it was residential.
Yeah, it's also a well-known farm in Neversink, the Neversink farm, it's like on an acre and a half, and it's like really high production, farming over there. But Jim,
Well, spreading manure on agricultural properties is not something that takes place all year long. You're only gonna spread the manure at a time that it's gonna be most beneficial for the crop that you're farming. I kinda compare it to snow. You know, we don't have to have very expensive snow removal trucks unless it snows. And we don't have to have, if we don't have it farming, then there's gonna come a day. Think about it this way. I think there's roughly 320 or 30 million people in the United States of America right now. I may be off a little bit, but it's a round number. I can tell you, absolutely, less than 2% of those 340 million people
1.8.
farm. 1.8?
1.8.
Okay, she's got the exact number. So think about it this way. Do the math and hope to God that farmers never unionize. Because if you think you're paying a lot for eggs now,
okay?
Mike, one more question.
Yeah, go
You
ahead.
mentioned something about the illegal pot farm on Burton Ridge.
Okay, in
Right.
relation to this discussion?
Yeah, so you said they purchased 10 acres behind them?
No, right now, their main issue is that, you know, Burnt Ridge Road has a lot of homes that are right next to each other,
Yeah.
but it's in an ag district. And they basically set up shop and created this illegal pot farm.
Yep.
The reason it's illegal is because they don't have enough acres, they need at least 10 acres to, you know, to be able to function.
Right.
However, if, let's say they were to buy, you know, an adjoining parcel that had 10 acres and
Right.
combine the parcel, then technically they have the space, you know, they don't have the setbacks, but again, under right to farm, you don't really need to have those setbacks.
Right.
So, you know, how do we deal with that situation when all the neighbors are like at their wits' end? You know, so, but we wouldn't be able to do anything in that sense because they have a right to
I
farm.
mean, if you bought a farm and then you bought a house next to the farm, that's your problem.
Right, and I think
But
that's what the
if I
Bethel law.
owned a house, if I owned a home, and then this guy decided to buy a lot and grow pot, or have ducks, or whatever it is, that's not fair to the homeowner either.
Right, but it's zoned for how it's zoned.
I get it,
Pete,
I guess that parcel is zoned in the ag district. That's
Right.
That's part of that.
so by rights,
Yeah.
they have certain
If
rights.
they got 10
And maybe they wanna
acres.
just grow sunflowers and that's,
Right.
and everyone would love that, but,
Right.
you know, what they're growing is controversial.
Right now, they're growing it right next door to like,
Well, that we're not gonna talk about because it's in litigation.
We can't get into the
It was a
details of it.
hypothetical so that you could understand what the dynamic is. If that was 10 acres, totally different conversation
Right.
as to what you're allowed. And
Exactly.
just apropos of the farms going away, my grandparents were chicken farmers. They had 300,000 layers. In fact, the duck farm you were complaining about was built by my grandfather. So the reason that you're seeing farming going away is for all the things that Amy said, but it was also feed costs. They were the biggest at the time, and they saw in the mid-70s, the handwriting was on the wall, because feed prices were going up, and the railways to bring feed were no longer a factor, so everything had to be trucked. So the cost of the raw materials to feed the chickens were just going through the roof. Eventually, there were some other farms that were amalgamated up to 2 million birds, and they all went under. There's only a handful of the chicken farms left for layers. As it's a cost thing, it's really, unfortunately, Fallsburg is caught in a state of New York. And the state of New York does not make it easy to be in business. Farming's no exception.
Now, I'm gonna, this question is gonna show my ignorance with regard to farming, but, so, my understanding is that agriculture is really important for us as a society because it feeds us, you know, we can't survive without agriculture. So we need cattle, we need, you know, we need everything. I'm trying to understand if it's illegal to eat horses, how do horses fall into the agricultural realm? You might be able to answer that more better than me, and I apologize for the
People do
ignorance
eat
of the-
horses, Japan and Germany is pretty huge actually.
Oh, do they?
They absolutely do.
So is there a market for exporting horses?
Mexico and Canada,
It would go, to answer that,
I'm not gonna do that.
a flower farm is also protected under right to farm if they meet the requirements of gross receipts.
It's like
Set
roses and
forth by the
daffodils.
state. So there are rules on what is and what isn't, how many animals, how much receipts, how much business to be considered a farm or agricultural business. All the ag and markets law is about that thick, and I will
It's
look through it.
It's a very big
But it
intense,
is,
I mean, it
Yeah.
includes like roses, which most people don't eat, and.
nobody's gonna eat a rose,
Right,
right?
and then
So it,
certain animals that people don't eat.
it covers all sorts of production. The one thing to remember about besides agriculture feeding people, every farmer spends their money in the local community.
Yeah.
You know, and what a lot of people, I mean, you guys see what your fuel bill is for the town highway department. You know, and a good sized farm is doing 4 times what a highway department does a year in fuel.
Just go back and forth.
Tractors use about a gallon per hour of diesel fuel, and they typically run 8 hours a day on most farms. So it's more that the right to farm law, when I worked in extension, it is the town saying, the state has already put a lot of protections in, as he said, that, you know, I can burn. That's a statutory right, I have to burn, even during a burn ban. It's written in the ag markets law.
Currently.
Currently, yes, it's ECL law and ag markets, it's written into law.
Okay.
You couldn't give me a ticket for it if you wanted to. And there's a lot of protections already in the law, but the problem is, where right to farm comes in, is saying that the town sees that, you know, accepts that, you know, and that people have the right to farm in the town. It eases a little bit of the restrictions, but so much of it's already statutory, but we have to fight for it. So you could give me a ticket for burning. Now I gotta go to the judge. Now I gotta go and fight the ticket in court. Well, you know, it gets thrown out, maybe it doesn't, because the town judge says nope, and then I gotta go fight it more. It's the town saying that, yes, agriculture is important, people here have a right to farm that are here, and that's but it's always been about the right to farm law. It's just reinforcing that, because there are people who are moving in who don't want it. They don't want, and we can talk about the really obscene things, manure smells and stuff like that. But there are people who don't wanna be bothered by the tractor driving down the road. You know, I had to drive 30 miles an hour the other day because I was stuck behind a tractor. Well, you live in the country, and just saying you live in the country doesn't matter. They don't see it that way. We see that here all the time in these meetings. You know, they don't even know where their water comes from. These people who come up from the city, and all walks of life, they don't know where their water's coming from. I know people who moved up and they're like, I have a well. It's like, yeah, you have a well. You laugh. It happens. So that's just something to, while you're thinking about the specifics of it, the overarching theme of it is an acceptance to farming, to agriculture.
And on that end, I'm wholeheartedly in support,
yeah.
you know, we wanna create awareness, we wanna, you know, tell the public that we are proud of our farming community. You know, but again, you know, when passing a law, you wanna look at the nitty gritty, what are the effects, what are, you know, we don't wanna, you know, I'm thinking to put into the law, you know, something on the burn ban, but it looks like the state already has that, so why duplicate that?
Right.
Maybe it's more of a training or an awareness thing for our officers to make sure it doesn't come to that. So, I think this is the first of many conversations. Yes, Chairman, please.
I think you ought to take this and look at it strictly from a very, very positive way. What can the town of Fallsburg do to promote ag tourism? And until you get that question answered, I wouldn't worry too much about a right to farm bill. I think a right to farm bill should just happen, but focus on what can the town of Fallsburg do to help promote the ag tourism side of it, which is gonna generate the revenue that this town, another way to generate the revenue that this town needs.
Well, we do.
Yeah, we need a committee to do that.
We do. I mean, we do have some agritourism type businesses.
Ask Amy how much she charges for somebody to go ride one of our horses. They're not coming from Loch Shelter to ride our horse.
Very few.
So, yeah, so that I'm supportive. So I think this is gonna be the first of many conversations while we try to hone down all the pieces that we need to incorporate to make sure that this law is effective and has the outcome that we want. Because we could pass a law that's called right to farm, but it really has no teeth and has nothing in it, and it just makes us feel good that we passed a right to farm law, we're a right to farm town. But, you know, we want something in there that's impactful and that, you know, actually serves our farmers. All right, does anyone from the board have any comments or anything to add? Ocean, it looks like you want to say something.
Oh,
No? Okay.
I want to give Nathan my little Christmas present before he takes
Before
off.
he-
Oh, okay, all right, so we're almost done.
Okay.
All right, so,
Motion for executive.
all right, so,
On litigation.
right, all right, so I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session to discuss current litigation.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. All right, motion passes. We do not anticipate any further business after executive session. I want to thank everyone from the bottom of our heart for coming out tonight. And with that, we are adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody.
How was your leg?
My foot, yeah. Next week I'll be back there. You're in.
So I wanted to learn about since you're taking home for
Sullivan County.